Welcome back to On the Light, a podcast dedicated to illuminating the profound teachings and legacy of Yogacharya BKS Iyengar. I'm your host, Susan Johnson. In this episode, Lee and I are honored to be joined again by Prashant Iyengar. Here, Prashantji shares the fascinating arc of Guruji's practice. He tells us how Guruji initially learned the asanas, drawing solely from his own personal experimentation. Through Prashant's narrative, we gain a deeper understanding of Guruji's relentless dedication to perfecting each posture. Additionally, Prashant sheds light on how Guruji came to write his seminal work, Light on Yoga. He shares the profound realization Guruji had about the depth of knowledge he needed to acquire before undertaking such a monumental task. One of the things I love most about this episode is in the beginning of the interview, you can hear the children in the background playing. They must be Prashantji's great nieces and nephews. And Rohit Kulkarni, who edited this episode for me, tried to edit out the background noise, which was great, but I'm really glad that some of that laughter and the sound that you hear from the children playing is still left. So if you're wondering what that is at the beginning, those are just the household noises there in the Iyengar home. I hope you enjoy this episode of On the Light.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks for meeting with us again.
Okay. Namaskar.
So I listened to our first interview and you wanted to talk about Guruji and yoga in the early years. As I recall,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think today we should talk about Guruji's practice.
Sure.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, we should know that we practice what we are taught when it comes to yoga.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep on practicing that on and on and on. As we learn, we start practicing that. And we tend to imagine that it was the same thing with Guruji.
Mm-hmm.
But that was not at all the case with Guruji. Because he was a self-made man in the sense he learned on his own. He had to teach himself. And therefore, nowhere we have basis to infer as to how Guruji might have practiced. Because our way of practice will influence our thought process. It will think this is the way Guruji practiced. Now, Guruji had to learn on his own. Guruji had to learn through his practice. And he had to practice what he learned on his own. So it is real difficult to decipher which part of his practice was learning and which part of practice was his teaching. He taught himself. Now, when we people are pursuing our yoga, we don't teach ourselves. We are taught and we learn ourselves. So it's a unique condition to have as the basis to deliberate on Guruji's practice. Part of his practice was to teach himself and part of practice was to practice what he learned. And if you look at Guruji's life, his practice changed and what he learned at different points in time changed. Because he was not familiar with what yoga is. Now, today's students are quite familiar with yoga because of the social media, etc. People will have read so many things, heard so many things, will have visited so many sites. So nowhere we have basis to understand how Guruji might have practiced. Guruji had no idea about what yoga is, and he had to explore it himself. And as he started exploring, perhaps the samskars were there and they started surfacing. Because of the manifesting cause appeared. He started doing something. He had inquiry about something. He wanted to learn something. So I won't say he was absolutely a blank slate. That is not possible. He had in his samskar cortex so many things, but the samskars need manifesting cause for them to come on surface. The Guruji had various stages of his practices. So various goals were set by him for his practices. Now, when he was in a tender age, or in his teens, or even 20, 21, 22, 23 years of age, he had set a goal that he must learn all those various asanas which he had seen in Yogashala, and through association with T. Krishnamacharya, he had seen so many postures because Krishnamacharya was teaching veterans when Guruji was there, and they were veterans of 10, 20, 30 years, and he was teaching them complicated poses as well. So Guruji had idea of various asanas, like, to put it short, 200 asanas that he has presented in Light on Yoga. He knew them. So his first goal was that to practice yoga is to learn these postures. He had no idea anything outside the posture as something as yoga. So a boy of 18, 19, 20, 21 years of age, he thought yoga is postures and I must learn these postures. And that was the age that perhaps he should have learned. Because if he had postponed it to another 20 years, the postures, then he would not have mastered so many postures. One cannot be learning so many postures at the age of 40, 40 plus. So that was the right time that because his body matter was malleable and it was a time for him to struggle to get difficult, complicated asanas. So his goal was to get so many asanas. So he was not getting Kapotasana on the first day. He was not getting Raj Kapotasana on the first day. He was not a circus boy, circus girl like. So he had to learn all those asanas. And his main goal was to learn these asanas and learn these asanas to perform. So he started learning these asanas to make them display worthy, not just learn asanas for oneself, to be doing it. Like we say, now I can do Kapotasana. Now I can do Vrishikasana. We have said in different points in time, now I can do Hanumanasana. It doesn't mean that I am doing it for display. I first do it for myself. But he had this in his mind that he had to propagate yoga also, because otherwise nobody was asking what yoga is. Nobody was interested in yoga. That was the case as it was in West. It was also in India, because yoga was considered to be something very esoteric practices of aesthetics, and common man. Yoga was not for common man. And therefore, Guruji had to really break his head to convince people that yoga is for common man, and it's not necessary that one should be extraordinary, ascetic, renunciate, philosophical minded, etc., etc. So he thought asanas are not merely to be done, but they should be displayed. They should be demonstrated. They should be presented to world at large. Otherwise, he would. There was no chance for him to thrive as a practitioner of yoga, because he had to make his living. He had to earn his bread and butter, and so yoga was only vocation, and yoga was only profession for him. So he looked at yoga as something that asanas to be learned, asanas to be presented, make them display worthy, and then draw attention of people, make them appealing to people, so that somebody will be appealed to be doing these asanas, complicated asanas, youngsters, etc. So he started practicing. That was his practice, and he indeed worked very, very, very hard, 8, 10 hours a day to learn these asanas, various asanas. And you know that he was not a healthy child, he was an unhealthy boy, but potentially he was extremely energetic person. Once he got his health, he was equal to 10 youngsters in physical power. So potentially he had that, but it is because of the condition of diseases such as tuberculosis, etc., etc., he had become very feeble, and he thought that he is very weak, he is very unhealthy. But just as under the ash, there is a fire. If you remove the ash, then you can see that there is red fire under the ash. So that was his condition. Clinically, he was very, very weak, very fragile, and diseased boy, suffering, vulnerable to all kinds of attacks of flus and cough and cold that never left him. He would be all the time under a bout of cough or cold and fever, etc. And therefore, he got frustrated, dejected in his childhood and teenage. But potentially, he was a very, not only healthy boy, he was a very strong boy, extremely strong boy. Only that ash had to be brushed aside. The ill health, weakness, and the ash of illness, ash of feeble, fragile condition had to be just blown out. So when that was blown, he was extremely energetic and he could put up practices up to 7, 8, 10 hours, rigorous asanas. So that was a great revelation for him. And when you realize that health is not only giving him health, yoga is giving him extreme form of health, physical prowess. So he got motivated better and better. So otherwise the world knows that he overcame the diseases, that's all. He got free from constant influenza bouts and tuberculosis disease, etc. It's not that he just became healthy. He realized that potentially he was an extremely powerful young boy. And that he realized when he was in early 20s, that he was very, very powerful, very, very strong, extremely strong. He could engage himself with 3, 4 youngsters of his age in a physical engagement. He had such a strong physique and energy, bubbling energy, no dearth of energy. So he saw great transformation in him in those 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Otherwise, he was very fragile, very weak, suffering boy. But now he realized that he's an extremely strong boy. And therefore, he could put up with those rigorous practices which today's youngsters cannot put up. None of us can be really rigorously practicing for kapotasanas and viprichakrasans and balancings and complicated asanas. They enormously suck the energy to just learn these postures. So his main aim was to get all those asanas, difficult contortions of body. And that he went with enormous fervor. He was now endowed with energies, stamina, tirelessness. And that's how he decided to practice asanas, get all the asanas, not even as an exception, leave any asana that this is not possible for me. Otherwise, we write off so many asanas from Light on Yoga. Many of us have written it off for lifetime. So that was not his case. He wanted to get all those difficult asanas as well. And then he wanted to get the performing beauty or display beauty, not just do Paschimottanasana by holding the toes and touch the head to the knee. No, he wanted that display worthiness. And that's how he started working for perfecting postures for not only sake of asanas, positions, but for display worthiness. I should perform them with grace. I should perform them with ease. So that's how he went about for quite some years, might be until he was about 35, 40 years of age. He started refining his postures for display worthiness. From come to any posture from any posture. How is it possible? Is it possible? So he had the influence of Vinyasa, which Krishnamacharya was teaching for children. See, Vinyasa yoga is not really, today it has become a style of yoga. But Krishnamacharya devised Vinyasa for children, considering that their flexibility, very malleable body matter, and their spiritedness. And this Vinyasa he was teaching in Yoga Shala for children. So it's also interesting to sometimes ponder over T. Krishnamacharya's teachings in various forms. He was teaching in various forms. Now Vinyasa was picked up and now it is branded. Krishnamacharya school means Vinyasa Krama. That was not true. So that was how Krishnamacharya was making children to go from one pose to another pose, one position to another position, one complicated position to another complicated position. So children should be taught that way because we don't teach precision to children. We don't want them to stay in asana. We just want to teach them motions. That's how the children should be taught yoga. So Guruji later realized that children should be taught in particular way, and he often said about how to teach children variety, challenges, no precision, no perfection of the posture, no precise posture, and no staying, no timings. So in demonstration, the Vinyasa Krama aspect came very handy for him to perform asanas. So you are all aware that he did asanas from his jumpings, etc. Right from standing poses to forward bends to so many asanas, he would flow into those asanas. So Adhomukha Svanasana can be a launch point to so many asanas. Uh, Urdhva can be launch point to so many asanas. So he discovered all that, which made him really top class teacher for children. He really specialized to be a teacher for children who are not interested in yoga. Nor do we want to stuff down the matter of yoga into them. How to teach children? So he practiced. That was also good for him to perform gracefully. That's why I said yoga is a performing art. So he advocated this, that yoga is a performing art. He wanted to prove to the world that it is a performing art. So he spent quite an amount of years in refining his postures. Still, he was not bothered about asanas, yogasanas, did not distinguish between postures and asanas. Even in his understanding and comprehension, it did not occur to him, because he kept himself busy in this particular endeavor, that I must perfect my postures. And don't mistake, it is not asanas. Postures are not asanas. Our postures are not even positions. More often, these postures are contortions. When it is display worthy, naturally, to impress people, you will have to show some difficult contortions which common man cannot even imagine. So that's how he was rigorously practicing to refine his display-worthy asanas and make it a performing art. Then second aspect was, when the teaching came his way, he started teaching private tuitions, etc. What was he teaching? They all came with some problems, some maladies. So he had to think about that. People come to be with problems, physical ailments, or psychological problems, mental problems, and they expect solutions from me. And therefore, he started, when the students started coming to him and asking only this, can you cure this? Can you cure that? As a matter of fact, when he came to Pune, V.B. Gokhale brought him Pune. He was a civil surgeon that time. So he brought Guruji. He was a medical man, civil surgeon of Pune. So he was only interested in getting cured. And T. Krishnamacharya, in those days, was propagating yoga as something that can give remedies to problems, physical problems. So that was another thing that he had to attend to in his practice. Because those students are not going to display asanas. They are not going to be performing asanas. They want cure from the asanas. So that also started coming in when yoga became economic activity for him, because demonstration was not his economic activity. He was not getting any money by demonstration. As a matter of fact, he gave all his demonstrations free. He never charged, even as an exception for one demonstration. No one ever paid, never did he ask for any remuneration for demonstrations. So 100% demonstrations were free of charge. And thereafter, he started making charity out of his demonstrations. He collected money and made charities. He never earned any money. So it was not economic activity. Performing was not economic activity. Performing was only to influence people and draw them towards yoga. And in demonstration, of course, he started talking about that this asana is good for this disease, this malady, that malady. So that's how he influenced people, and people started approaching him. And therefore, now he had to start devote some practice for remedial yoga, remedial aspects of yoga. How, which asana can be a remedy to what problem, for which organ or which limb, etc., etc. So that took a chunk of his practice time in discovering, exploring, understanding, experimenting which asana is good for back and bad for back. Somebody have a back problem, which asana I should not take, which asana should I take. So this aspect came into his practice, to be discovering, to be exploring, to be experimenting. So he started doing the asanas, trying to understand the spine in every asana, trying to understand waist in every asana, trying to understand the anatomy, joints, muscles in various asanas. So this again became yoga as a physical culture. So much of his time was taken up by looking at yoga as a physiotherapy, which is, of course, a physical culture. And through physical culture, physiotherapy. So that's how this gained importance in his practice time, that I should also try to know this. Because somebody would come with a slip disc problem. Then there was no a book which was mentioning which asana for which problem, etc. So he had to study on his own. If somebody comes with a disc problem, slip disc problem, somebody comes with arthritis, somebody comes with hernia. So he started looking at asanas in the remedial perspective of it. And then, of course, he had to practice to understand. Is it really good for liver? Is it really good for bladder? Is it really good for lungs and heart or anatomy or any systemic organ? Because people came with different problems, right from ulcer, cancer, such diseases, ulcers and hernias, etc. Somebody came to him, I don't have any offspring, any scope that I can beget some children. So he had to look into that aspect also. Women's problem, men's problem, youngsters' problem, health problem for young, old, men, women, very old, etc., etc. So his practice was more explorative, and that was more kind of practical for him to practicality in pursuing practice in that dimension perspective of it. So that took away, and that made him a good teacher in yoga. Was he teaching yoga? No, he was not teaching yoga, but he was recognized as a very good yoga teacher. Even in our old house where we stayed until 1974, he had a board at the door, B.K. Iyengar, yoga instructor. Now, what was that yoga? Yoga is to cater these health solutions. Nobody came to learn yoga, nor he was prepared to teach yoga. So what was his yoga? To give remedies to people. So how I can improve myself in remedial yoga. So that changed his practice to some extent, which was because by that time he had mastered his asanas. See, by the age of 35, 40, he was able to do all asanas, 100% of asanas that he wanted to do. No asana was yet to be attained or yet to be finished, fine touch, etc. So it was all attained. So more attention came to remedial aspects. So by 40, 45, when he started teaching and people knew him, that he has remedies for problems. So he had to attend to that aspect of yoga. It is remedial. So his practice also gave importance to that. Now, we people, we don't bother about it. We get ready-made things. Our teachers tell us, somebody had slip disc problem, arthritis problem, this is the sequence. A pregnant woman, this is the sequence. We don't explore and discover. But he had to do everything by himself. He had to discover. So understand how the thought process was now changing. Earlier, it was just, I must make a asana as a display art, performing art, perform it well, take it to people, get applauded by people. But now this aspect came in. It was unfortunate that nobody was interested in learning yoga. If I may say so, until 1950, 1960, 70, in India, nobody came to learn yoga from him. So he was known as a master in treating medical problems where medical science failed, the doctors failed. They saw that Iyengar could succeed. So he specialized in that. He started working more thought process, etc. involved, and talk to medicos about getting to know various diseases, what kind of, because he was not a student of medical science. So he developed rapport with some of the good physicians of the town in Pune. They were well known in their time, 1940s, 1950s, they were well known in Pune. So he started interacting with them to have knowledge of this anatomy and physiology. And later he started reading about books on anatomy and physiology. But as ready reckoners, he would go to one of his friends like K.C. Gharpure. He was a physician. V.B. Gokhale. Then one Dr. Modi. So these were top-class physicians in the town. And he was very good friend with them. And that's why he got to know medical science. And then he looked into some books of anatomy physiology later. That was later. But then yoga was now only remedy. Yoga was not a philosophy still. So his practice did not give any scope to philosophical aspects of yoga because he was engaged with this kind of yoga. So he started teaching in Pune, he started teaching in Mumbai, he went to Mumbai in 1951 again, all remedials, medical problems, and work on those. But then his students started pressing him to write a book on yoga because they all found solutions to their problems. So they all had idea that yoga is remedial, and therefore they started pressurizing him that he should write a book. So it dawned on him that he should go for his first book, which was Light on Yoga. So when he started pondering over how to go about writing a book, because people have one idea and they want me to write a book for that purpose, give solutions to various physical problems and maladies and diseases. That's what they expected. But then he started reading books on yoga.
I don't want to break your train of thought on this, but a couple of names about those students from Mumbai who asked him and urged him to write the book. Tarparwala. Who are these names?
Yeah. Tarapurwala, then Mehram Alegamwala, the Palkiwalas, that is Mehram Palkiwala, then Palkiwala.
Yeah. Were Sam and Franny involved at that point?
Sam Franny came later. No, they came mid-60s. They came mid-60s.
Okay. All right.
And some of the students in Pune, like he was teaching on Mr. Pocha, Dr. Modi also, he was teaching Dr. Modi. So they also said that it's a good idea to be writing a book. But then they had the idea yoga is only remedial. And that's why they wanted him to write a book. But when Guruji had thought process on it, he realized that I cannot just be writing book on remedial yoga. So he then had to basic question was, what is yoga? Because that should be the first question to write a book. What is yoga? So he realized the limitations in him. And then it became imperative that he should be reading some books on yoga. So he started looking into philosophy. Yoga is a philosophical system. It is one of the orthodox philosophical systems, 6 orthodox systems. So getting to know something about 6 orthodox philosophies, what we call as Shad Darshanas, and then philosophy which comes in Upanishads, etc., Bhagavad Gita, etc. So he started procuring books, maybe around 1950 onwards. And then he started getting to know about the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita, subject matter of some of the Upanishads, Yoga Upanishads, yogic texts such as Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Geranda Samhita, Shiva Samhita. He said, unless I read this book, I don't have right to write a book on yoga. And therefore, he embarked upon reading the texts of yoga. So that was for him to equip to be writing the first book of his Light on Yoga. Because the first problem was, what is yoga? Has to be explained. And then he had to collect material for what is yoga. So that opened out a totally different portal. And naturally, he had to see that this philosophy somewhere trickles down into my practice or it sprouts from my practice. I cannot keep complete watertight compartment that is philosophy and this is my practice. The practice should seep into, the theory should seep into my practice, or the theory should spring forth by my practice. So that dimension occurred to him. It is what is this textual yoga? So what is chitta? Chitta vritti nirodha? What is chitta vritti nirodha? So these basic theoretical problems were haunting his mind. And he realized that unless there is a co-mingling of philosophy and my practice will be not yoga. So this gave totally a different perspective for him to pursue his practice. Upanishadic principles, Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, etc., the various Chitta Prajna Darshan, Gunatita Yogi, etc., Jnana Yogi describing Bhagavad Gita. So all the philosophy started coming in, Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So he had to depend upon Patanjali Yoga Sutras for his book. He could not say that I don't refer to Patanjali Yoga Sutras and I will write light on yoga. So this was like opening a basket of toys for a child. Various kinds of baskets, toys in a basket. If you open out the basket for a child, what happens? That indeed happened to him. And this was really, he challenged himself there. He said, I must challenge myself because otherwise, so far I was ignorant about it. And I was trying to make my way through without taking recourse to this textual yoga, traditional yoga, etc. So the light on yoga changed. His very thought to write a book, which dawned to him in 1957-58. He started to work on light on yoga in 1957-58. So that was kind of an enormous, fascinating portal. Otherwise, he was totally blind to this portal of yoga. So his practice tremendously changed with advent of writing light on yoga. Chitta, Chitta Bhumi, Chitta Vritti, philosophy of yoga, kriyas, bandhas, mudras, asanas. So he had to crystallize all these things to really put into words in a book. And for that, he used his practice to understand these technical aspects of yoga, asanas, pranayamas, kriyas, bandhas, mudras, etc. So that changed his course of practice totally. It was a radical change for his practice. Precepts of Patanjali Yoga Sutra would be haunting his mind because they should reflect in his book in some way or the other and in his writings. So that changed his practice altogether. So light on yoga was a major landmark in his life as far as practice is concerned. That is embarking upon writing it. And then we saw the light of the day in 1966. It was a thumping success, the book.
The book being published.
Yeah, book being published in 1966. And it was not just published. It went like hotcakes. And even now, today, it is going on. Light on Yoga is still going on. We still are beneficiaries of these royalties on the book. And even today, we get a royalty to say amounting to about 3.5 million per year. Rupees, 3.5 million rupees. That is 50%, and 50% goes to trust. So nearly 7 million are still coming per year without fail from 1966. Then he got the limelight. So people started approaching him, interview, etc., press people. And then he had to talk about yoga to people also. So the eloquence is different than writing. You can write something, but then to talk offhand, somebody comes for interview, answering them, etc. So it was a different challenge. So the thought process, that wheel started picking up pace in his practice to try to have revelations of theory, precepts, concepts of yoga through practice. So his cognitive wheel and the ideomotor wheel picked up pace. And therefore, his practices became very, very discerning, thought-provoking, thought-based, thought-stimulating. So the practice was altogether different. Now, many of the foreigners who started seeing his practice after 70s and 80s when they came to India, they failed to understand that we will not be able to see with our eyes certain things. The thought process that is behind his practice will not be visible. They will only see the body features, body positions, the appearance of matter of the body. So many of the students did not really understand. They thought seeing is believing, and they all wanted to see his practice. And they thought we will learn by seeing his practice. So many of them watched him for decades, from 80s to about 2010. They watched him in every practice session when they came to India. And they thought they will be knowing Iyengar by looking at his practice and not just attend his classes. But they never knew what is going on in his mind, psyche, consciousness, internal aspects of yoga, esoteric aspects of yoga. These are invisible movements which cannot be objects for eyes. None of them understood, which is sorry state of affairs. And they thought they understood Iyengar because they were with him, they learned under him, they watched him, they saw his practice. So they were all really misled. So anyway, Light on Yoga opened out, and then after Light on Yoga came the demand for Light on Pranayam. So Light on Pranayam was again a big turnaround in his practice, because what pranayam comes in Light on Yoga is very, very rudimentary, very, very primary. And now writing on Light on Pranayam was a challenge for him. And therefore, it was again a landmark in his practice, Light on Pranayam. So pranayam is not just breathing exercise. There is so much of philosophy. There is so much of esoterics in it. So his practice of pranayam gained importance. Until that time, his pranayam was just half an hour per day. That was enough. Half an hour of pranayam was enough for him, because he was so occupied in his practice, in his research, in his study, in his observation, his teachings, etc. And his other occupations which came up later because he became international figure. The correspondence took about 2.5 hours, 3 hours every day. This was enormous taxation. That is one of the reasons why I decided not to step into shoes of my father, because that kept him extremely busy answering to the queries coming from these raw teachers. Everyone was raw. If I may say so, they were all quacks. Any problem in their teaching, they would write a letter. What to do for sciatica, what to do for slip days, what to do for knee problem, what to do for pregnant ladies, etc., or any such problems for women. So it was waste of energy for him from my point of view. He spent nearly 2.5 hours every day answering letters, handwritten letters, all handwritten letters. And this was, for me, criminal waste of time. He was so much occupied. Later came, this yoga in the West, then certification of yoga. And it was again too much of burden on him. I said, my God, he's losing time on unproductive things, which are not productive for his yoga, but maybe productive for his students. So making up the syllabus, syllabi, etc., for various courses. So a lot of energy was lost for the formation of the whole formal teaching of yoga. It took a lot of blood away from him, and time away from him, energy away from him. So anyway, Light on Pranayam. And then came Light on Ashtanga Yoga. So Ashtanga Yoga means he had to really put a spotlight on Ashtangas of Patanjali. And then Light on Yoga Sutras, then the whole subject matter of Yoga Sutras. So this changed his practice, because he invested thoughts in construing certain things, understanding certain things, And this was directly related to his practice. Many of us, Atha Yoga Anushasanam, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha doesn't get related to our practice. We stand in Tadasan, we do Tadasan, we go to Shirshasan, we do Sarvangasan. There is no link between, even if you know Yoga Sutras, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. What is that? Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. What is that? We think it is a theory and it is something else to talk about and write about. But then Guruji was a conscientious person. So he had to have the integration, and that's why his practice completely changed. So you can understand when the philosophy, when the Geranda Samhitas, etc., Shiva Samhitas, etc., the precepts, etc., which are haunting on his mind, definitely changed his approach to practice. So then Guruji started speaking about esoteric aspects of yoga, which none of his students understood, never bothered to understand. He related 4 compartments of the brain with 4 compartments of the heart. This was of no avail for his students. They don't bother about it. They just wanted to know what to do with this muscle, what to do with that muscle, what to do for this problem, what to do for that problem. They were not interested in all these things. However, Guruji was trying to post all these things for them to understand that this is yoga. And Guruji knew that he cannot be going and teaching yoga, going west to the west just 2 or 3 months and teach in each place a week or 4 days or whatever. He realized that this is not the way to teach yoga. So he told them indirectly, you people should come to India if you want to learn yoga. So he motivated them to become teachers because he thought they will be more dedicated to yoga, in yoga, and therefore it might motivate them to come to India for a longer stay rather than some 3 days in New York and 2 days in Washington and 5 days in San Francisco and 3 days in London and Paris. So he understood that this is not teaching yoga. So he told the student that you should come to India. Indirectly gave the clue that if you want to learn yoga, you will have to come and learn in India. But his students again mistook it. They thought he's inviting us to yoga, India. Which is the best time to go to India? Summer is not good time to go to India. So they escaped all summer. Nobody came to India in summer months. Which is the best month? Winter is the best time to go to India. And then icing on the cake, that happens to be Guruji's birthday. So they made it a point to come during December, invariably. And attend the celebration as well, or attend birthdays, because every time year it was a celebration, but birthdays, and offer their respects on that day or whatever. So they started coming in month of December. The Guruji's idea was not that. He wanted them to come to India for a longer duration, for a longer period, but he could not insist that you come and stay there for 3 months or 6 months or 8 months. But he really suggested that they should come to India to learn yoga. They won't learn yoga when he comes to West. He cannot be teaching yoga in West. He came to the entire European and American continent and European continent, but he knew that he is not teaching yoga in 2 days and 3 days and 5 days and 10 days. That's why he said, he gave this clue, and he made them teachers because he thought if I make them teachers, they'll be dedicated and they'll be interested to learn the yoga. But these people came only for 3 weeks course in month of December or maybe 1 month and then go away. Under some pretext, Easter, etc., we have to return back in January. So that actually misfired. They did not understand Guruji's intention in telling all these senior students to come to India. He wanted them to learn yoga. And it is not possible to learn something in 2 days and 3 days. So that was a disappointment for him because people only came for his birthday. So he could not be expressing a disappointment. If I came to his birthday, he could not say, I am disappointed by your coming. But that was in his mind. He said, I said that we should come and learn. They are coming only for intensives of 3 weeks or come for 1 month and then go away. He also made indication that they should attend the classes of Gita and myself so that that will be a gate, outer gate for them to get to know something about yoga because we were teaching in the locals here. Today he wanted them to attend their classes, but some of them had the pride. We are teachers, we are trained teachers, and therefore they hesitated attending our classes. So they would do only Guruji's classes intensive, etc. And then Guruji was not teaching low intensives. Then Gita took the intensives. They attended Gita's intensives. So I don't know, I understood some flaw in the aspect of concept of intensives. Therefore, I made it a point not to take any intensive. Anyway, so it stopped with Gita taking intensives. Thereafter, there are no intensive at all. Anyway, Guruji's practice, we cannot say this was his practice. He went through, so it was really like prism. His practice had so many shades and so many colors and so many gravities which impelled and propelled him to practice. Now, this is not our case. We learn and we start practicing. We learn and we try to get to know and then we start practicing. That's why I've been stressing that it's an explorative subject, discovery subject. You have to discover it. It is explorative. It is not a technical subject that we go on shooting at techniques at you and go on adhering and following the techniques. That's not yoga. This is what I am doing for last nearly 10 years. I don't teach asanas with a technique. I give them precepts. I make them sensitive, aware, etc. And be explorative, discovery. That is yoga. Anyway, so there were two highlighting situations that I should mention today towards the end of this session. That the Silver Jubilee celebrations of our institute. This happened in year 2000. So there, Guruji said, I will be teaching only for whatever 5-10 minutes, and you delineate on what I have said, open that out what I have said. I won't open out, I will only teach them something, and you do the opening. So that was a wonderful opportunity for me in year 2000, when we had that course with many of the veterans from all over the world attended. So he would teach for about 5-7 minutes an asana, and we would take the platform and we would explain what did he say, why did he say, what was meant, what was implied, what was implicit, what was the purport. So that was well appreciated. So that was also, Guruji liked that when I came and interpreted his teachings. So that was the first time I was interpreting his teachings in year 2000. Then his 80th birthday, 85th birthday. 85th birthday was another chance. He said, I will teach something for them in the morning. And he said, you give me some kind of plan to cover the subject matter of yoga. So some small pamphlet was brought out, Panchakoshas, Panchatatvas, Panchavrittis, Panchabhumis, etc., etc. And the three bodies, causal body, gross body, causal body, and subtle body, etc. So I gave him so many things. And by that time, I had written a book on Chitta Vijnana of Yogasanas. Book was not out. My manuscript was there. And 18 Mahakriyas. So I gave manuscript for him to read. And he appreciated that. Because I schematized the whole process in 18 Mahakriyas or Yogasana book. And he liked it very much. And then, meanwhile, I made my recordings of nearly 2,000 hours of recordings on yoga. And I gave him my cassettes. He heard my 2,000 hours of cassettes. And then in 1985, we had a course and he said, evening, you just explain all that underlying theory, philosophy, mysticism, etc., etc. So I would take down notes during his class. And then in the evening, I would open that out. This was his 85th birthday. So that was another great opportunity for me. And then he also acknowledged that I can articulate on the what you call subtle aspects of yoga, which are not overt and they are hidden. So that he appreciated. So that his audio recordings are still available in archives and people can hear about it, where I gave exposure to theory of yoga. So that was another opportunity for me. And then for his 80th birthday, there was a mishap that he suffered a heart attack in the month of August. And we said, let us put it off. No, he said, no, it is on. So there was some change, and he took the morning asana classes, and he said, you to take the pranayam classes. So we would ask what to teach it, because that was his class. So we would ask him what to teach in our pranayam class, each session. So he would tell us what to teach. And surprisingly, he came and told me on one day, you teach kumbhak, the antar kumbhak, inhalation, retention, but no physical dimension to it. Without physical dimension, teach it. Otherwise, what is pranayam? Lift your spine, open your chest, shoulders back, shoulder blades in, lift your sternum, head down, from nape of the neck, etc., etc. This is how kumbhak was taught. So he said nothing about anatomy, nothing about physical process. Try to teach them kumbhak. So he relegated that, and I took that kumbhak class. So it is available in the archives. Those who are interested, they can get it. Audio visuals are there. Anyway, so Guruji's practice was really very, very colorful, multi-dimensional. Practice 8-10 hours, then he started practicing 3-4 hours, etc., etc. That's not just hours. What is the material? And it is extremely difficult to bring out the material and show you that this was his material, because in different stages of his life, it was different material. And that was really fabulous. Very, very colorful. Very, very like prism. So anyway, I think we should stop today for this session. Okay.
This was very rich. This was very, very rich.
It was. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Namaskar.
Thanks so much.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Thank you for tuning in to On the Light. Stay with us as we continue to unfold the life's work of BKS Iyengar and the auspicious subject of yoga. Today, I leave you with one of my favorite quotes from BKS Iyengar. Yoga is like music. The rhythm of the body, the melody of the mind, and the harmony of the soul creates the symphony of life. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, shine bright.